Welcome back to the ActTwoWriters podcast, a podcast for the real-life working screenwriter. I'm Tasha Hugh.
And I am Josh Hallman.
And as a reminder, Act Two is a network and support group for the everyday working screenwriter, which this podcast is just one of our many initiatives. So thank you for joining us here, and please remember to subscribe to the podcast. This is like my bully voice. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on our topics.
What a scary bully.
Give us a rating, write a comment, tell us how you're doing post-strike. What does that feel like for you? Everyone's experience is different. You can also DM us with questions, topic suggestions, or you just want to say hi at ActTwoWriters@gmail.com, all spelled out, or on our Instagram and Twitter at ActTwoWriters. I am Story Thursday on Instagram, Tasha 3.0 on Twitter.
I'm on Joshua Hallman on Twitter, Josh Hallman on Instagram.
Josh, how you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. I'm excited to talk about whatever we're talking about today. And no, I am. I just got excited about it.
Today we are talking about what inspires us as writers, and where do we find inspiration?
Yeah, super important. And I feel like this is not like us coming at somebody being like, this is how you find inspiration. I feel like it's just how we have found it. And it's a discussion that needs to be had, because a lot of times people might just putz on social media thinking they're going to find some inspiration, and that might work for some people, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Story of our lives. This is not the way. It's just our way.
Which is the way. Before we jump into this, Tasha.
Yeah.
This week in writing.
Oh, shit.
This week in writing.
Okay, so this is a little anecdote. I have a friend, an acquaintance, who is a writer.
Mm-hmm.
He's a director. He edits, kind of does a little bit of everything. And I should say he's kind of finding his footing in writing. He works more so in with photography and directing and stuff. But
Okay.
I've had a few conversations with him, and every time I talk to him, he talks about the use of using a green screen for AI, or he's going to map a location with an AI program, or he's like, if I talk to him about, hey man, because we were working on something, it was like, how can we shoot something? His idea is like, well, if we can't get that shot, it's okay. I can just do something with AI. And just to be completely honest, and I would tell him this, it's become a little bit of a crutch for him. And it's a little scary because, and this kind of ties into actually our topic, because I feel like in the perfect world, AI is a tool that people use to get help with, just like you use the internet or you use a computer or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But it does seem like, and I'm a little worried, maybe this is going to happen to more people, but it's almost like a crutch, like a defense mechanism. He's like, I need to use AI in order to get ideas, because without AI, I don't have a creative idea in my brain. That part was harsh, what I just said at the end.
It's harsh, but it is a good segue into the topic, because obviously we know how I feel about AI. It's interesting. There are people I've never spoken to about AI before who know not to speak about AI in my presence. So I talk about it so much on the podcast and how much I hate and fear it.
It's like Fight Club.
Yes. But yes, obviously it takes away from your own creativity to rely on any program to fill in the gaps, or any other person, or any other thing besides you. It inhibits creativity. Of course it does.
It's such a catch, because I think about Final Draft.
Yeah.
And we both know shortcuts on Final Draft.
Sure.
Cut to, titles. And it's like we're having a computer do that for us.
Sure.
So it's like a gateway. I'm almost a hypocrite. I have...
No, but there's nothing on Final Draft we're using to help us create dialogue or to create a scene for us.
That's
and we're
true.
Just filling in the gaps of something. It is completely dependent upon us entering the information into it.
Yeah.
That is creative.
Anyway, if AI can just be a tool, which I hope it is, that inspires people, best case scenario, I'll be okay with it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I hate saying it. It makes me physically ill, but I've seen lookbooks and whatnot that have AI imagery in it.
Yeah.
And it's spectacular. It looks, because I have, as someone who has spent many, many, many hours trying to perfect lookbooks, which requires so much time trying to find the perfect picture to illustrate your idea or the character you imagine or the world you imagine. If you could just type in what you imagine and get a picture out of it, saves so much time.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, you got to pick and choose with AI. I agree with a lookbook or something like that. Man, so you don't have to go looking on the internet for some kind of feeling. You can just type in what you're looking. I'm looking for, an action moment with someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger and set with like zombies. And you're like, here's a picture of it.
Can you imagine when your daughter grows up, not even a little bit, just like in a few years, you can be like, back in my day, we had to scour Pinterest for pictures.
Yeah.
It took hours to put lookbooks together.
Listen, she's 7 and I've already been like, you don't know how well you have it. You don't get it. Just buying things on an iPad. No, she doesn't get it.
My day, we had to go to stores for everything.
Feel spoiled, kid. Anyway.
Inspiration. Where
Tasha.
do you find it?
The Act 2 podcast.
Yeah, the ActTwo podcast. Absolutely. But honestly, that's kind of a good point. I think there's inspiration to be had when you listen to people who are sort of fighting the same battles you are, who are thinking about the same things you're thinking about. For example, I went to grad school in Boston, so I still have some friends there. I went back there. And when I was working in the industry, I went back there and I found a cafe like I do here in LA. And I sat down, I started writing my screenplay. And in this cafe, everyone was reading classical literature or really, really highbrow psychology books, just like all the things that literati do. And if they were writing on their laptops, it was like their PhD thesis or essays and stuff. And here I am writing a screenplay. I felt like an idiot. I felt like a lowbrow moron. And I missed LA because I missed a place where movies really mattered to people as the most important thing. Posters matter. Just everywhere you go, people are writing screenplays. You talk about this all the time, the energy that LA has. I think that is inspiring. It helps to be around people and hear people and talk to people who are suffering your same problems.
Yeah. No, that's true. Like kind of just to bounce off of that, I actually recently read something that nostalgia, obviously it's comforting, but it helps with your ideas, like being around something that's nostalgic, because that takes you back to some kind of important time in your life. It's if you're somewhere and you're like, oh yeah, I remember this. It's either for better or worse, something very important happened wherever you're having this nostalgic moment. And I like moving to LA, taking hikes, things like that, being in nature in short, but being in nature in Los Angeles is like, for me, where my like brain opens up, and it's just, you're like, I see everything. I understand what I need to do. I know my purpose. Now I just need to figure out how to write a page of dialogue. That's it. No, but that's, I've taken drives to like old places that I've lived just to kind of like get my brain flowing and back into a time when, you weren't burdened with responsibilities. And
it's so interesting.
Yeah. I feel like you don't do that.
I don't do that at all. But over the last couple of years, Paul and I have, for one reason or another, had to drive down south past the neighborhood I grew up in, like the town I grew up in. And nostalgia is very real. And because it's so far away, it's like an hour drive from Los Angeles. We never go down there. And so there is something, you're right. You sort of step back, if only for a moment, almost like you flow into this bubble where you're just back to who you were back then, back to those teenage years where you were innocent and like hope was infinite.
Yeah.
So I can see that being inspirational. If that was closer to home, I could see myself doing that for sure.
Oh man, I feel like you don't have the same connection to LA that I do. in the sense where
I
you're
hate
like,
Los Angeles and everything about it.
yeah, you're like, yeah, it's just LA. I'm going to move. And I'm like, I'm never leaving.
I can't wait to move. Yeah.
What about like books, reading, things like that? Do you like go back to old books to read, or like, does that inspire you at all?
You know, I love books. I love them. I have not had time to read a book, and I can't tell you how long. However, I have started doing audio books and going back to books that I love or series that I love. And it's inspiring because I love them for a reason, and it's trying to figure out why. What about it is so good that sparks my imagination. And it also like puts you in a zone of just taking in information, I guess, like taking in, for me, it's, you know, big world building books. It's fantasy books and that kind of stuff. So like all of that world stuff, it just seeps in, and yeah, it inspires me for sure to read and or listen to books.
You know, every time I read a script, any script that I'm reading for fun, you like, you know, you kind of like form your own ideas, and like you get your own ideas, and you're like, oh, well, what if this happened? Like for me, reading other people's scripts sparks like something in me that always kind of leads to some kind of idea, whether I use it or not, or even when you're like, you can take things from scripts where you're like, oh, I like the way that this scene was kind of set up. How can I do this in my own thing?
100% agree. I'm always inspired by reading a script. Not a single time have I not been. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling.
All right, so Tasha, let me paint a picture for you. You're just having a rough day. You don't know what to write. You know you have to write an episode for a show, and you're like, I just don't have it in me. What do you do to get the juices flowing?
Here's the tough part. So I just got an email today saying, hey, where's our episode? I owe an episode to someone.
Oh boy.
That I've not even started. And as you know, I've had quite a day. So I have to finish it tonight. And I don't have time to do a thing that inspires me. Like I would do, like read a chapter of something to kind of put me in the mood. But I don't have that kind of time. So that's not a happy answer.
No, you're inspired by debilitating fear.
I am often inspired by deadlines. Yeah, just the fact something has to get done, I won't sleep until it's done. That's definitely who I am.
So you have a full episode to write tonight?
Yeah, I forgot.
Wow. Okay. Podcast done.
Yeah, I gotta go. No, but like let's take a different scenario, right? Where I have a little bit more time. I'm not feeling inspired. Maybe there's some writer's block, like with my spec. There's just something stopping me, some kind of fear stopping me from getting into it. I think something I've been thinking about with my spec, because it's a John Wickian kind of action movie, that's something that might jar me loose and inspire me again, is to watch John Wick or to watch another action movie that has inspired me and makes me love the genre so that I can find that love again. And that's sort of on my list of things to do to jumpstart me again.
Totally. Yeah, same. When you're trying to find, like, if I'm writing something that's in the tone of, you know, John Wick meets White Lotus or something like that, I'll read that sounds awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
Like I would, anytime you kind of like read those scripts, watch those shows, watch the movies, you get to where you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
But taking a bigger step back, you know, I'm a big fan of just silence, meditation, just closing those eyes and thinking, putting the computer away. I feel like if you do that, like outside, you're refreshed. You just like the fucking battery is charged.
10 minutes?
Yeah,
15?
10 minutes. Let's go in the shade for 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah. Hope no bugs fly on you. But
yeah, I'll wait till we get our patio.
But it's great. I feel like you need to be in silence. I think like that, just for me personally, I have to get away from like screens and stuff like that just for a little bit of time and just kind of like clear all of that, because anytime you get interrupted by a text message, someone calling, my mom doing something, I'm just like, you get thrown off. You got to get in the zone. Yeah.
I would say another place I get inspired is museums. Oh, I love them.
Oh, we're branching out. I love museums.
So much. every time I go, I'm constantly taking pictures of exhibits and the placards, and I've definitely used stuff I've taken pictures of in museums in my scripts. For instance, Paul and I recently went to San Diego, I think it was. And it was not for the specific reason to go to this museum, but a museum was there. So I was like, I'm going to go. So we went to this place, and I didn't expect to find anything particularly interesting, but in a random room in this old monastery was a story about the last Native American woman of this particular tribe that lived on the Channel Islands. And they didn't have a name for her. And the way they told the story was like, it was like a narrative of the mystery of who she was and how she got to be alone. She lived alone. She was like literally the last person on the Channel Islands. Like, how did that happen?
Wow.
And then she was taken to the mainland and like shown around. And it talks about her story once she lands, and then she became ill and eventually died from a sickness that did not exist on the Channel Islands. And there was a description of her back in the day that someone did of what her clothes were. And so it was kind of vague, but an archaeologist managed to like put together what it might have been. And it was like made out of feathers and not conch shells, because we don't have shells and things like that from the Channel Islands. And like they had sort of a display of what her gown would have looked like. And all of this really inspired me. And so I took a dozen pictures of all this stuff, and that's going to end up a character in something. So museums, I find, always give me ideas for either characters, moments, weapons a character might have, something a character might say, or knowledge that they may have. It feeds everything.
Oh, yeah. Like when you get out and see something new, there's nothing better than that.
Oh, it's the best.
Taking the drive. I bet you when, if you go on a vacation or something, you're just there. It's something, you just see something different. And you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about this. I've never looked at a tree this way. Oh, what would be cool? It's just the weirdest thing how ideas stem, or form. But yeah, just getting away.
Yeah.
Changing
and
scenery.
Some of the best writing when you watch it on TV or in movies tends to be like a specificity of something, right? Like the specificity of what someone might order in this particular region, or what they're eating as a snack, or like something that they wear that's very specific. And all of that comes from like being out in the world and seeing new things, like you're saying. So that always inspires me.
Well, that's it. Switching up scenery, changing it up, talking to people, being around people. The thing is, I think a lot of this stuff is it's kind of basic, but people forget to do it, myself included.
Yes.
It's like, you need to do something, but you don't. And I think a big part is just making that step to get into a different headspace.
Yeah, especially when you're working so much, you definitely get trapped in, I just have to write. And then you forget that your writing comes from something that's out in the world, and that's what you want to write about. The more you're out in it, the better it actually is for your writing.
I have one last thing to say.
Yes, please.
I ran into a friend a little while ago, and I was telling him that I was having a little bit of trouble writing. This was weeks ago. This was like towards the end of the strike. And he like put his hand on my shoulder and was like, "Writer's right." I was like, "Oh shit. Okay." Like I was telling him, I was basically explaining that I was kind of worried about the industry and what is happening. And his message to me was that if I was a writer, I wouldn't be thinking about that.
You just write.
That's what writer's right. In the back of my head, I was like, yeah, but like for profit, right? Like writer's right for profit. But yeah, no. And I think just remembering that for me, it's opening up, giving that freedom, just be like, hey, listen, writer's right. Don't overthink this thing. Just find the inspiration and go.
Yeah. All you can do is write. And be inspired while you do it. Otherwise, what are you doing it for?
You know what, by the way, I'm liking these little bursts of episodes that we're doing, a little short, just in and out.
Yeah.
People live their day.
Yeah. It's a vibe episode. That's what this is. We're just vibing.
And this was the vibe episode. Next one's going to be 2.5 hours.
40 pages of notes.
For sure.
All right. Go write.
Go
write.
Inspire yourself. Go find some freaking inspiration.
Go out in the world. That's what you should do. Go out in the world and write out there.
Are we missing something? Let us know. If there's ways, someone has like a trick that doesn't involve like drugs, just let us know.
Yeah, we do not advocate drugs here. All right. Quote of the day. Challenge of screenwriting is to say much in little, and then take half of that little out and still preserve an effective leisure and natural movement. Raymond Chandler.
Nice.
Please remember to rate and subscribe. Follow us at ActTwoWriters for more awesome writing stuff. You can follow me, Tasha, at Story Thursday on Instagram or on Twitter at Tasha 3.0.
I'm Joshua Hallman on Twitter, Josh Hallman on Instagram.
And as always, the Act Two podcast is a production of Act Two, a network and support group for the everyday working screenwriter. This episode was edited by Paul Lundquist.